Chapter 2. The odious Ix hard rain and wild winds cause giant dark green waves from the sour sea to crash onto the pink sandy southern shore of the Peppermint Kingdom, burping up a large ball of yellow sea scum. Powered by the wind, it quickly rolls up the shore, collecting pink sand, and smacks into the purple-brown cliffs of the southern shore. It bursts open and relinquishes its scum-covered contents of Zinda twigs, baby diapers, goo beans, sour daddies, a broken vac, and a squatty old, balding man with a ponytail and a long gray beard. Blich's body is pounded by the rain while a swarm of scum-covered sour daddies skitter onto him and crawl under his wet brown robe, where they begin pinching Blich's hardened and acid rain-scarred skin with their sharp little pincer claws. They attempt to shove chunks of flesh into their unusually large black heads. Blich screams to life and takes off his robe, then instinctively rolls around on the sand to unclasp the pinched claws. The sour daddies fall off of his body and are buried in the sand. Blich stands up and brushes off the remaining few, and suddenly realizes where he is. His eyes grow wide with excitement. "Welcome home," says Blich as he dives back into the sand, rolling around and laughing hysterically. His homecoming is cut short when another scumball burps out of the sour sea and crashes into the cliff wall a short distance from Blich. He hears the sound of a recognizable voice screaming and calling for help. Blich squints his eyes and sees the shape of a desperate young man dancing and flailing his arms. "Norf, is that you? Take your robe off and roll." The wind and the rain of the odious Ick continue to cause the waves to crash heavily as Blich hurries down the southern shore of the Peppermint Kingdom. One by one, 3 more yellow scumballs burp out of the sea and burst against the cliff wall and give birth to crying and screaming bodies, covered in pinching and biting sour daddies. "Take your robes off and roll. Roll in the sand. They hate sand," commands Blich. "The whales sure played an awful trick on us this time. My skin hurts," screams Glux as he furiously rolls and covers himself in the wet pink sand. "My legs are being ripped apart," complains Gersh. "They're stabbing my taint," cries SES. They both remove their robes and dive into the sand. Right as Blich reaches Norf, his son falls to the ground and becomes motionless. He pulls back his son's blood-soaked robe and finds that the sour daddies have eaten away a giant hole in his chest and have latched onto his beating heart. "New," screams Blich. "It tickles," whispers Norf, who can barely keep his eyes open. Blich weeps and puts the robe back over his son's mutilated torso. Norf raises his right arm to salute the sky. "Son, what are you doing?" General Dush says to not worry, and that I will be seeing you again soon. Blich solemnly nods his head with tear-filled eyes and watches as his son exhales and releases his spirit into the sky. The odious Ick roars, sending even larger waves to crash and cover the beach in a dark green stew, drowning out the cries of Blich and his BATS. Glux, SES, and Gersh eventually free their bitten and pinched bodies from the terror of the sour daddies and find themselves gripped by the shock of seeing their beloved leader stricken with grief and holding his dead son in his arms. The BATS form a circle of protection around the father and son, shielding them from odious Ick's harsh blowing rain. "The sour daddies ate through him like he was a piece of cake," cries the distraught Blich. "It's Leppy's fault that he has such soft skin. She never let him play in the acid rain and made him afraid of the sea," says Glux. "You tried your best to turn him into a sea boy. I failed him. That's not fair to any of us. We all tried to make him strong," says Gersh. "Yes, he thought of you as brothers," says Blich. Blich and his 3 remaining BATS let the tears of pain drop down their scarred faces, while they begin to sing the Broomer song of mourning. "Bristles of the broom, they cleaned your womb. Bristles of the broom, they cleaned your room. Bristles of the broom, they will clean your tomb." Blich then stands up and slowly carries his dead son into the raging sour sea. Its mouth opens and swallows them whole. "Where did they go?" wonders Gersh. Glux and SES ignore him and patiently watch the churning sea. Minutes later, he re-emerges without his son. His face is drained of all emotion. "He's a real sea boy now," says Blich, whose legs give way as he collapses onto the pink sandy shore. His BATS rush to help pick him up, yelling their rallying cry.
Yeok.
Now it's time to find Bruno, says Blich with a renewed energy.
Yeok.
Big boy, booms the odious ick in the distance and interrupts their moment of camaraderie. We need to move now, commands Blich. They gather their broken supplies into their backpacks and find their way around the tall cliff by hiking up a steep rocky slope with Blich leading the way. Once they reach the top, they find themselves looking out onto a vast landscape of rolling cotton candy-colored whisker grass-covered hills that are currently being tormented by the blasting winds of the odious ick. In the distance, its moaning head can be seen entering the Peppermint City. Blich and his BATS pause to take in the foreign, wide-open landscape. It looks so safe and comfy, says Gersh. Looks can be deceiving, warns Blich. Now what are these? Says Glux, who points at a puffy pock shrub with bright red pockberries. He kneels down and pulls a branch in close to his face for examination. Odd number of leaves on each branch, pleasant scent, whispers SES while sniffing and chortling wildly. He rips a berry from the shrub, crushing it in his hand. 1, 2, haha. 6 seeds. Boys, they are edible. Mildly poisonous at best. Looks tasty. But are they? Says Gersh, who hungrily grabs for one of the berries. Don't eat that, screams Blich and slaps the berry out of his hand. This land offers many treats that will decay your soul. I'm sorry, Blich. I guess I'm a little hungry after spending the night in a whale's belly, eating scum, whines Gersh. Oh, come on. It was decent scum, says Glux, who laughs and lightly pokes Gersh's belly. My son is dead, screams Blich with wide, focused eyes that yank the BATS into an intense, awkward silence, leaving only the hysterical winds of the odious ick. Do not be fooled. We are not welcome here. Norf is dead. Surely he won't be the last. Trust nothing. Remember, this is a place that drove our people away. A corrupted land with a corrupted people. Where do you think the gunk and junk spawns from? Huh. Answer me, you bastards. Are you my BATS? The 3 BATS, not sure what to do, anxiously erupt in their signature screech to answer Blich's call. However, the odious ick answers back with booming laughter and a large blast of wind that rattles the squatty men. Gersh loses his balance and rolls down the grassy hill, splashing into a pit of dark orange mud. He moans in pain and slowly picks himself up. The ground under his feet is soft and Gersh smells a strange, tangy odor. He takes a step to start walking back up the hill, and suddenly the ground underneath him breaks away and Gersh disappears into the abyss. Blich, SES and Glux shriek in horror and run down the hill. They gather around the large, dark hole and are shocked by the pungent, salty fumes that are leaking from it. Gersh, can you hear me? Are you all right? Asks Blich as he kneels down and peers into the hole. The sounds of hundreds of wiggling, wet creatures can be heard expressing their love for their new friend as they cover him in their warm slime. Help me, cries Gersh. Blich turns and looks at Glux and SES to see if they understand the seriousness of the situation. They respond with still confirmation. Goo beans, says Blich. We need that rope. Absolutely, says Glux, who unzips his large backpack and pulls out a yellow Zinda rope. He unfurls it and hands it to Blich, who then quickly drops it into the dark chasm. Gersh, can you see the rope? I think so. Ha ha ha. I feel weird, says Gersh, grabbing onto the rope and giving it a tug. Let's get him out of this stink hole. Blich, SES, and Glux each grab a hold of the long Zinda rope and attempt to hoist the heavy young broomer out from the dark abyss. Suddenly, the ground rumbles and crumbles and opens into another giant hole, sending the trio underground and splashing into the large pool of goo beans. The squeal of the goo beans heightens as they hurry to cover the BATS in their loving slime. Resist their advances. Keep holding on to the rope, warns Blich as he furiously stabs one of the slimy, sausage-shaped creatures with his whale bone knife and sends it flying and crying into the wall of the cave, leaving a glowing orange splotch. Aha, of course, yells Blich, who instructs the others to begin throwing more against the wall, fully illuminating the cave. Its light reveals a wide rocky shelf extending from the wall. Blich dashes through the muck and jumps onto the shelf and begins to pull his 2 bats out of the green slime pool. Eventually, everyone is on the shelf and checking themselves for hidden goo beans. Gersh has a dazed look on his slimed face when he feels something slithering up his leg. He pulls back his slimed-soaked robe and finds 2 large black sausage-shaped goo beans racing towards his anus. He grabs one, but the other is too quick and disappears inside Gersh's body. "Uh-oh," whimpers Gersh. Blich, SES, and Glux begin to squirm and complain as goo beans enter their buttholes. The 4 broomers squat and lift their robes, desperately trying to expel the slimy intruders. "They must be sucked out forcefully," yells a deep, bubble-throated voice. They turn their heads to the nearest cave wall and see a floating pair of glowing pink eyes and bright orange lips that form a smile as a tall white-robed figure materializes from the wall. The unexpected sight of the man causes their grunts to cease and their buttholes to shudder and tighten. "My name is Turg. Let me be of service to you all," says the tall, orange-lipped man. "Can you feel its nibbling in your lower intestine? Divine, but deadly is the tang. I see the fear in your little eyes. Fear is darkness. Your butthole is the candle. My mouth is the flame." Blich raises his arms defensively to shield his young, still squatting bats, pointing his whalebone knife at the mysterious figure. "No thank you," says Blich gruffly. "But Blich, if he doesn't suck it out, we will all get the goo gut," retorts the emotionally vulnerable Glux with his but high in the air. "So be it," says Blich, unmoved. The tall, orange-lipped man lets out a high-pitched chuckle and slaps his knee. "Goo gut. You're all too late on that one. The moment you were slimed, you were primed. I'm just trying to be a nice guy. It feels good," explains Turg, "and I like the tang. I'm the last of the Tang Gang. The others have been murdered." "Tang Gang?" asks Gersh, bent and waiting despite Blich's protests. The tall, white-robed man pulls out a little orange pipe and takes a puff, exhaling a green smoke. Blich's eyes shoot wide open and Turg notices. "Ah, fellow Guck boy, I see." "Guck?" screams Gersh. The bats stand up and give the stranger their full attention. "Ha ha ha, the spirit of the underground," laughs Turg, who gives the pipe to Blich. "Pass it around." Blich doesn't hesitate to take the pipe and inhales the tangy smoke. He and most broomers are accustomed to sniffing the crushed Guck crystal, but Blich and his weary bats will take whatever they can get in this circumstance. He exhales a green cloud and coughs hard, conjuring up a wad of brown goo and spitting it onto the rocky shelf. A relaxing warmth spreads throughout Blich's body and his vision brightens. He is now able to see every crack and color of the cave, and the tall man's white robe, orange lips, and bright pink cleary eyes glow with a rare beauty that mesmerizes Blich. Then a long, melodious blast of air escapes his butthole as he collapses onto his back. Next, the tortured cry of a slimy goo bean is heard as it willingly evacuates its twitching host and slithers out from under Blich's brown robe. "Love me, love me." Splat! Goes the sound of Turg's large, dirty, and calloused foot as it smashes the goo bean. "He is strong," says Blich, who slowly claps with approval and stands up. Gersh, SES, and Glux freeze in horror, then excitedly rush over to be the next one to get a hit of the Guck pipe. Like Blich, they find themselves farting and falling to the ground, letting the crying goo bean evacuate and get stomped out by the calloused foot of Turg. The broomers, high from the Guck and the relief of no longer having a creature inside them, dance around on the shelf and hug each other. Blich smiles and strokes his long gray beard, removing the remaining goo. "Thank you, Turg. Very good Guck. Very strong. It's a tasty salve for the soul, my friend." "Will we still get goo gut?" stammers Gersh. "Without a doubt. Even with the goo beans out of our bodies?" questions SES. "Yes. You will love it. The eggs are delicious." Blich feels a stirring in his belly and a twitch in his brain as he contemplates a life with goo gut. He thinks about his father, Huey, who died from eating the eggs. He had gotten goo gut in the Great Sea War and was forced to eat the eggs as a punishment. Unfortunately, his father happened to be allergic and died with a gurgling scream as goo filled his lungs. Since then, Blich has never had much of an appetite for eggs. The BATS's dancing and rejoicing turn into moaning and bending as their bellies expand with a stuttering whine. "Follow me," hollers Turg, who walks over to the wall and then grunts and strains his large body to move a heavy stone that reveals a long, narrow tunnel. "It's not too far. Watch out for cave beetles. They do bite." He crouches and disappears into the new passage. With bubbling bellies and buzzing brains, Blich and his BATS have no choice but to follow the giggling Turg through the dank and narrow cave tunnel. Due to the guk, they have become more sensitive to their surroundings as they easily hone on to the delicate sounds of skittering cave beetles, the crunching of unknown objects, and taste the salty mist that blows against their lips. The journey through the tunnel is short, and soon they come to another boulder that Turg shifts and reveals an opening into an orange glowing, dome-shaped space with large stalactites that hang from the ceiling and drip an orange syrupy liquid into the mouths of large marshmallowy sexless beasts with long twittering tails. The floor they lay on is covered in thousands of crushed, yellow-green eggshells. "Welcome to the ghetto, boys. It's Humpty Dumpty time. My tangies will help you with the passing of the egg." The marshmallow beast's pinched eyes snap open beneath their heavy eyelids, and, with unexpected grace, they somersault themselves to their feet. Like serval automatons, they each assign themselves to a groaning and bloated broomer and take them to an area of the cave that is lined with piles of dirty clothes. The broomers are instructed to line up shoulder to shoulder and lie down on them. Each groaning broomer does as they are told and, like a true team, forms the line with little confusion. They fall onto their backs and, instantly, they are covered in a brown puff of stink that reminds them of their recent nighttime ride in the cranky puss whale, a large white whale that is known for its distinctive early morning cry and its pink, sunken eyes. Turg jumps and hangs on to a stalactite that has been fitted with a foot at its end. "I hope you boys have strong pelvises," laughs Turg wildly with a wink. Phase 1. Orange syrup begins dripping down his right arm as he beams a razor-sharp smile and focused greedy eyes. "I better not see any yolks." The puffy beasts walk up to the side of their assigned broomer. They raise their right foot and begin slowly applying pressure to their broomer's belly, who respond with moans and farts. Turg is overcome with joy and begins swinging and singing a mild melody with surprising grace and talent. "It's coming," screams Glux, who lets out a long, gigglish fart. "Make it stop," pleads SES. "Stay strong," reassures a sweating and grunting Blich. "Am I going to be a daddy?" asks Gersh. Blich grabs onto a pair of crusty red and white striped boxers with the back blown out and wipes his brow with it. "Hold on to your crystals, boys." "My glistening crystals," grunts Gersh. "You're all glistening beautifully," exclaims Turg. Phase 2. The puffy beasts each grab a blood-stained net and place themselves in front of their assigned broomer and ready themselves for what is about to come next. The broomer's groans and screams escalate until a large BOF fills the air and fist-sized bloody eggs shoot into the nets, spraying blood on the tangies. Turg lets out a victorious cry and cackle as he drops down from the stalactite to observe the quality of the eggs. "Outstanding! The cycle of life continues, my tangies." Turg's manic cackle slowly fades, and the room grows dim as each one of the sweaty and traumatized broomers lose consciousness. Seconds later, they are awakened to a sour stench and a warm muck that massages their toes. They open their eyes to find themselves buried in a sea of trash and start coughing and gagging. They roll through the sticky soup, covering their brown robes in putrefied slime and bits of torn trash. A piece of rancid sweet potato enters Gersh's mouth, but he can't help but swallow it. Eventually, the broomers reach the trash shore and smack into a blue padded wall. They poke their heads out of the trash and are startled to see above them a snoring half-naked giant with a long yellow beard covered in a white puke, sitting on an equally large golden puffy throne. "Everyone, be careful. It appears we have been transported to the lair of a giant. A very messy giant," whispers Blich. They cautiously climb up what is now known to be the giant's bed and find a field of crumbs the size of rocks with an army of large brown ants nibbling on them. Blich readies his whale bone knife and instructs the others to do the same. "These are no forest ants," warns Blich. The fear subsides as they realize the ants have too many crumbs to eat and don't have time for them. Suddenly, a strange ringing shakes the air and Blich and his BATS cover their ears. The puke-faced giant grumbles and smacks his lips, then stands up. In a sleep-possessed state, he picks up the shaking handset of a phone, mumbles incoherently, and then drops the handset, hitting the speaker button and causing an elderly woman's voice to fill the air of the room. "Bruno? My boy. Are you there? Bruno? 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 Hello? I don't care what they say. I am worried about you, and I am coming to see you." There is a click, and the voice disappears. Blich furrows his brow and tries to comprehend what he has just heard. "This can't possibly be the Bruno," says Blich to the others. The giant stumbles over to the bed and collapses onto it. The little Broomers scatter to avoid being crushed, but the giant's large body causes the mattress to bounce and send the Broomers flying onto the giant. They latch onto him like scared sour daddies. The giant instinctively grabs for them and captures Glux in his right hand and begins petting his little body. "Good doggy. Good doggy." Glux nervously giggles as the other Broomers can only look on with horror, until suddenly he disappears. The sleeping giant doesn't seem to notice or care as he goes back to snoring and smacking his lips. Blich, SES, and Gersh look at each other with fear and confusion. A sizzling sound overtakes the room and the smell of eggs enters their noses. One by one, they each fade away and then awaken to find themselves back in Turg's tangy cave. "Ah, you're finally awake," says the pair of beaming orange lips. "Sweet dreams I hope you all had." The groaning Broomers frantically open their eyes and notice the large smears of blood on the clothes in between their legs. They instinctively reach for their buttholes to check the damage and become confused when their hands feel a hard embedded object with a string attached. "Oh, by the way, you won't need help getting the eggs out anymore. Your holes have been permanently widened and are now fitted with a gum plug." They panically give the string a yank to remove the gum plug, causing a long whining blast of trapped air and a deluge of wet poop to spray against their tunics. The Broomers groan and desperately place the gum plug back into their buttholes. Turg succumbs to a fit of laughter. "How many more of these eggs will we produce?" asks Blich, who knows this is the question on all their minds. "About one a day." They all sigh and groan. The smell of cooking eggs fills their nostrils. "Come, enjoy the fruits of your labor. You all brewed a savory batch." Blich tries not to take in the eggy aroma, but the others are too hungry and carefully stand up and follow Turg into the dining section of the cave. "I guess it's a good source of protein," sighs Blich as he stands up and reluctantly shuffles his way towards the hissing of the strange breakfast. In the dining section of the cave, a tangy can be seen pushing a large spatula around a giant black kettle filled with hissing and sizzling eggs. The creature raises the spatula, showcasing a pile of steaming bright green fluff, and dumps it onto a giant platter that sits on a large, circular stone table. Turg encourages them to eat to their delight. Gersh is the first to take the offer and bellies up to the table, stuffing a handful into his mouth. The extreme heat of the eggs burns his mouth, but he forces himself to swallow it. "It's good. A little hot," exclaims Gersh with tears forming in his eyes. He is unsure what he just ate is truly safe and ethical, but his belly doesn't care. Glux sees this as a nod of approval to extinguish his hunger and sorrow with something warm and truly edible. He finds a seat at the table and grabs a handful from the platter. Gersh takes out a little white bottle from a pocket inside his tunic. This Yuki dust should give them a nice pop. He pours a little bit of the dark yellow powder onto his eggs and offers it to SES and Glux, who are pleased to see something normal. They dump a healthy amount onto their eggs before taking a deep breath and then devouring the eggs. The sounds of munching fill the air. Soon after, Blich arrives, but appears reluctant to join the feast. "Grab a taste, Blich. You worked hard for this meal." "You all did," says a clapping Turg. Lost in a depressed stupor, Blich doesn't react. Turg snaps his fingers at the tangy and points at Blich, who then drops the spatula onto the ground and waddles over to Blich. "Din din," mumbles the tangy, who points at the mound of fluff. Blich ignores its presence and watches with disgust as his BATS fill themselves with the enemy. A drop of orange liquid lands on Blich's scarred and hairless scalp and drips down his face. The tangy notices it and comes face to face with Blich, staring at the orange liquid streak. Juice. Blich looks into its puffy and collapsed eye vents, trying to find meaning in its speech. The tangy lifts his puffy left paw and wipes at the orange liquid. Blich swats it away and causes the tangy to cry and waddle back to the kettle. Blich sighs and then decides to find a place at the table between Gersh and Glux. "I can taste their love, Blich," laughs Gersh, patting his groaning belly. "What a gift. From now on, we will eat like kings," says Glux with a giddy jerk of the spine. "A king wouldn't eat these eggs," sneers Blich, "especially the Peppermint King. He hates goo beans, among other things," says Turg, who hands Blich his guck pipe to soothe his nerves. "Take a kingly puff." "You know, the Peppermint King?" says SES between mouthfuls of the steaming fluff. "Why yes, we go back a few years. I gave him something of great power when he needed it, and he gave me these," says Turg, tapping a gnarled orange fingernail against his bright pink cleary eyes. "Then he murdered my family. I haven't seen the kingdom in ages, or much of anything else. I'm mostly blind," laughs Turg. "Yikes, that's unfortunate. You seem to be able to see well in this dimly lit cave," says Glux. "What cave?" says a confused Turg. "I know where I live." The Broomers all nod and stuff their faces with more eggy protein. "We thank you for your generosity and kindness. Now, speaking of the kingdom, can you help us get there?" asks Blich. Turg grabs his pipe from Blich and takes a long draw, blowing out a large green cloud into the faces of the munching Broomers. "Where are you all from again?" "The Gump, sir," says Gersh. "The Gump? Never heard of such a place. Give me an honest answer." "Turg, it's true," says Blich, who snatches back the little orange pipe and sucks in another puff of guck, then offers it to the others, who gladly accept. "We are part of the lost tribe of Broomers that was wiped away by the odious Ik and found refuge on an island outside of Hemigia that had no previous inhabitants except for some disgusting and malnourished animals and insects. We call this place the Gump." "Amazing," says Turg, who wiggles and claps his hands together like a giddy child. "What an honor to be of your service. But why have you decided to return, and what business do you have with the Peppermint Kingdom?" "The odious Ik is back, and we believe that it is a sign of the coming of a great savior from another dimension that will end the tyrannical trash spirit. We must find him before the storm does." "Very interesting indeed. You are brave to want to do battle with the odious Ik again. Now, when you find this man, how will you truly know it is him?" "We've already seen him," interjects Gersh as Blich turns his head with a sense of foreboding angst. The others stop eating and quietly listen. "As we passed our eggs, we had a vision. We were all in a massive room full of strange trash, and there was a furry, pink giant. His name was Bruno, like the savior," says a wide-eyed Glux. "You're all fools," says Blich, who slams the table and causes the platter to shake. "The brute was an obvious disciple of the trash spirit, not Bruno." "Blich, don't be such a sour puss," says Glux, who pulls out a rotten sweet potato from his tunic side pocket and takes a bite out of it, becoming giddy due to its unusual taste. "Just look at this. Smell it. Taste it. It is our savior." Glux waves the amber-fleshed lump below Blich's nose and eyes. Blich explodes and punches the sweet potato from Glux's hand, creating an ochre splotch on the floor near Turg, who giggles with amusement as he bends down and gives it a lick. It's got a tangy tint, but no tang to the taste. Glux cries and holds his red, twitching hand as Gersh and SES are stunned by the strange, violent outburst. "Norf didn't die for some giant, slumbering trash prince," retorts Blich. The air is awkwardly silent, except for the nervous purring of Turg and the odious Ik's rumbling thunder from above. Gersh decides to break the silence by leaning over and giving Blich a hug, causing Blich's nose to twitch as it takes in Gersh's goobeen musk and eggy breath. "Give him a break, my brothers. Remember, Norf has just fallen." Another drop of orange syrup lands on Blich's scarred, hairless scalp and drips into his right eye. His eyes flood with tears and mix with the orange juice, as his memory flashes to his dead son's heavy, limp body sinking to the lower depths of the sour sea. "Come back. Don't go. Father," Blich becomes weak as the body of Norf materializes a few feet from his eyes. Son, I'm cold. Blich pushes Gersh to the ground and lunges to touch his son, but the ghost of Norf fades away, leaving Blich shaken with sadness on the cold cave floor. The Bats stand up and form a circle of forgiveness around him. Turg takes another puff from his guk pipe and watches with giddy amusement as the swaying Broomers begin singing their song of forgiveness. We woo, we forgive. You. Glux lets out a shriek when he notices the orange lips of Turg are wrapped around his red, stubby fingers. Do not be afraid, reassures Turg, who turns to speak to the other Broomers as they form a circle of anger around him. I am for your service, my great Broomers. I'll lick your wounds from head to toe and more. Anything for you, pleads Turg. A sparkling, green tear forms in his left eye and drops down his face. A little goobeen pops out of Turg's left nostril and quickly slurps up the teardrop and disappears back into his nose. The circle of anger becomes an oval of shock, but Blich knows what time it is. Then take us to the kingdom, commands Blich sternly. Turg winces at the idea, but the vengeful vibe of the heavy-breathing Broomers causes him to quickly relent. As you wish, my brave Broomers. The surface is quite dangerous, but I think you'll find on your journey that I am a part of a larger community of Broomer sympathizers. A loud thunderclap vibrates from above as more drops of juice begin dripping from the cave, sealing at a quickening pace. Juice, juice, moans the thirsty Tangy, who tilts its neck back and sticks out its bright orange, stained tongue to catch the falling drops. Blich and the Bats lift their tunic hoods over their heads and look around and above in confusion as the orange rain eventually covers everything in a layer of sticky syrup. Joyous moans of the Tangis can be heard in all areas of the Tang cave. This isn't good, says Turg, who notices a stream of orange water coming down the cave walls. We better get going. Bats, gather your supplies, commands Blich. Turg puffs nervously on his pipe as Blich and the young Broomers grab their goo-soaked backpacks, then quickly follow an increasingly paranoid Turg through a series of narrow, but tall, axe-carved tunnels that glow orange with tang. As they get closer to the Peppermint Kingdom, the thunder and the orange rain become stronger and heavier, rattling their bones. Turg stops and cranes his ear. What is it, Turg? Wonders Blich as the others shiver and try to imagine themselves in a warmer and less sticky situation. Turg purrs nervously as the sound of 1,000 little clacking claws grow louder until it is all around them. Turg and the Broomers have no choice but to let the little rushing cave beetles crawl up and over them. After a few moments of creepy terror, the swarm of cave beetles is over and are far down the tunnel. I've never seen that many together before. Something strange is happening, worries Turg. Before they can gather their wits, the tunnel walls start to vibrate again and a strong, deep current of orange, not so syrupy, juice knocks them off their feet. With whoops and hollers of excitement, the water-savvy Broomers are quick to maneuver their little brown bodies and go with the flow of the stream. Turg, not knowing how to swim, is pushed to the back of the line as he frantically shifts his limbs like a lame insect and uses his tang drinking skills to keep the juice out of his lungs. They bob in and out of the tang-stained river like turds in an actual sewer, shooting them further down the tunnel system.